worked before in Thomas Education in Almaty, so she has taught science and she has experiences, a little bit of experience with Singapore methodology, I believe, as well. So yeah. Okay, Angellie, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjar, and thank you for having me here. Again, just a quick background. By profession, I am a physics teacher. So that actually gives me a good understanding of the concepts in mathematics and in science. And then just this year, I started my master's degree in KIMEP University Almaty, where I'm studying MA Foreign Languages. So this master's program actually is geared towards developing teachers on how to teach students whose first language isn't English. This is very useful for my job here in Almaty because my students are either Kazakh or Russian speakers. And as a foreigner, this is something that other foreigners can relate to. Language is one of the first barriers that we encounter in our lessons. So for one of my coursework in KIMEP, I actually did a research. This is about the technique of code switching, which I will elaborate later. Code switching is actually useful not only in mathematics, but in other lessons whose content should be delivered in English language. So let me just give you a quick background of what I do. So from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock every day, I work in global education school. And from 5 o'clock to like 9 o'clock in the evening, I study my master's degree in KIMEP. So I have a little bit of a hectic day every day. Yeah, so if we can just remember, Singapore mathematics in particular is very high on the CPA approach, which stands for concrete, pictorial, and abstract. I think that everyone would agree with me that there's not much problem with the concrete and the pictorial stages of the CPA approach because the students have concrete materials in which they can analyze the concepts that are presented to them. So in this example, which is addition, they can do addition by using blocks, or they can use pictures, which is easy for them because this is something that they can visualize. However, the sort of problem or difficulty that I see teachers are facing happens during the abstract phase of the CPA approach. So this is a particular word problem that I took from grade 3 mathematics book. And I'm not sure about your students, but I'm sure about the students that I have taught in Kazakhstan for the past 5 or 6 years. But there's a lot in this question that I know they would find difficult to understand. So let's like both. Okay, this word both, which is the past simple of by. This word similar, removed, capacity. So I always find my students struggling working with word problems. So if the lesson is just plainly doing the skills in mathematics, it's very easy for them to multiply, add, divide, or subtract. It's not going to be a problem. But if you put these skills into context of word problems, that's where the problem starts to come. And that is because of language barrier. Okay, but that's something that we can't do about because this country is multilingual, I guess, not only Kazakh and Russian. So we have English and we have other languages coming around. So as teachers, or as a teacher who has experience teaching mathematics, science, and English equally, I guess what will I share to you today will be helpful in your work as teachers yourself. One of the popular approaches in teaching ESL is CLIL, or they call it CLIL, which is Content Language Integrated Learning. So using CLIL, we can make our students to learn English through learning science and mathematics at the same time. Okay, so you have science and mathematics, you can use them. So the kids will also learn English along the way. Okay, it sounds quite difficult because we know we have students who have zero knowledge in English. We don't know where to start. So I'm going to share to you one technique that I have observed other teachers are using, and sometimes I am actually using in my classes with the little Russian language that I have acquired through the years here in Kazakhstan. By the way, CLIL, or Content and Language Integrated Learning, these are situations where subjects like mathematics and science are taught through a foreign language. In our context, our Singapore mathematics and Singapore science, we are teaching them in English. And the goal of CLIL is, we have two goals: learning the concepts or learning the content, and learning the language at the same time. Okay. So one technique that I use and other teachers that I observe are using is what we call as code switching technique. I guess this technique is will be very helpful for our local teachers, since you can speak Kazakh or Russian very fluently. Whereas for foreigners like me, we either need the help of a teaching assistant, or in my case, I know a bit of Russian, but it's a very bad quality Russian. But code switching happens when bilingual or trilingual teachers like you switch from one language to another in the same discourse. So to make it simple, you use the student's L1 or first language to learn the second language. Actually, teachers, there was an idea when I was starting to do English language teaching that says you shouldn't translate when you are teaching Kazakhstani or Russian students. So we shouldn't translate. However, what I found out in my courses or in my current field of study, that when we integrate the use of the student's first language, they can easily make connections with their second language. Okay, but the thing about code switching technique, teachers, is that we will not literally translate everything what we are saying, because that's another thing. That's about translation. Okay, code switching is for our is for us teachers to help our students understand most of the time the difficult concepts that we are presenting in our lesson. We have heard about this thing from our speaker earlier in the morning. I have also heard it with our with the past two speakers. So yeah, we can use Russian, Kazakh, and English at the same time. Okay, and there's no worries about that. Okay, it's actually a good way of bridging your students L1 so that they can easily remember L2, and it's gonna stay for them better because they understand what does it mean in their first language. Last semester, I actually did a study. I did a research of how code switching happens in a science classroom. So this classroom that I have observed, this is made of a teacher whose first language is Kazakh, but she speaks Russian fluently. And the curriculum that I have observed is some sort of a British curriculum. So obviously, all the materials presented are in English, the same case as in Singapore mathematics and Singapore science. I understand that the students, not all of them, have a good grasp of the English language. And since science is a very technical subject, we have a lot of concepts or terminologies in science, the teacher was forced to use code switching in her lesson. So there are different kinds of code switching. So there's actually 5 of them. But I will give emphasis on the first 3 types, which is instruction for content acquisition, reformulation, and instructional for language acquisition. So very quickly, type 4 facilitation is when you use code switching, when you are giving instruction or daily routines with the students, asking them to do this or do that. Helps with classroom management. And type 5 or habitual, it doesn't have a connection with our teaching. Sometimes we just say words, but they don't really mean a thing. So I guess that's not really important at this part. So let's begin with instruction for content acquisition. So in this kind of code switching, the code switches happens in between of what we are saying. So if you can look at this example, and I will also play the audio.
Okay, the soul. Answer in Russian if you want. Give me the answer, your opinion. Я так не поняла, что надо говорить. В чем? Как мы вот отличим, вот вам дали, да, я сейчас говорю, physical properties. Как вы можете понять, что это именно physical properties? Как она отличается от химических, chemical properties? Нет.
Okay. So in this particular example, when I came there were 2 new students, and both of them have, let's say, poor English language skills. So the lesson was about ceramics. It's quite a high lesson in chemistry. This was a chemistry lesson. So the teacher, she was asking the students, what do you know about this thing? And I'm sure, and it actually was seen later on at the audio, the students know what are physical and chemical properties. But the problem was, number 1, they didn't understand when the teacher asked completely in English. And number 2, they cannot express themselves fully in English. So sometimes, we tend to include, you're asking a sentence straight in English, and then you have to say something in Russian, so the students can understand. This instruction for content acquisition, this is very useful if you are explaining our new concepts to the students, something that they haven't heard before. Okay. Sorry. The second one is reformulation. Reformulation is something like directly translating the sentences. Okay, so this one, you do this, teachers, when you want to make sure that your students really understood what you have said or what was written in your slides. So this is more on understanding or checking understanding and comprehension. So again, let's listen to the audio.
The size of the crystals will depend on the speed of the cooling. If our cooling process will be like slower, we have like larger crystals. Look at this one here. They will larger crystals. Получается, структура, она будет полная, когда они остывают быстрее. So it means like at the end it's like cool slower. They will have like very hard structure.
So first, she said the concept in English, and then she translated it in Russian. So I guess this is really a very good advantage of local teachers, local bilingual or trilingual teachers. You can easily, shift from English. If the kids won't understand, you can go to Russian or you can go to Kazakh. So I guess it really works.
The size of the...
Sorry. Okay, and the last one is instructional for language acquisition. So this is, I think, one of the most important, but unfortunately, something that wasn't given importance. And so firstly, what do we do in instructional for language acquisition? While we're teaching science and mathematics, we're also trying to teach the kids linguistic abilities. When we say linguistic abilities, these are abilities related to language, specifically in English. So this is about constructing sentences, finding the correct tenses of the verbs they are using. So this is more about the acquisition of the English part in a CLIL lesson. Why did I say that this is sometimes a missed part? Because, for example, we have a word problem. And then, kids would easily see the numbers and figure out that, oh, this is multiplication. They can easily multiply. They just gonna write the answer and that's it. Okay. But I think it's a missed opportunity because sometimes when we are asking our students about something, then I think it's a better way for us teachers to encourage our students to answer incomplete sentences. Yeah. So why not try them to answer incomplete sentences, and then as teachers, as somebody who know language better than them, help them to correct verb tenses, preposition, how to construct sentences, or how to make their sentences better. Making our students answer incomplete sentences is also a realistic and authentic way of English language communication inside the classroom. In teaching EFL students or ESL students, the best way, or this still the best way for us teachers to help our students in improving their language is by realistic communication. Okay, no matter how much we try to ask them to do this, to do that, to give this or to do that, but without actually having real communications in class, I guess it's not gonna be that quick, that familiar to the students. Okay, so that this all of these things will not lead us to this point. So how, as teachers, how can we help our students improve their English language skills while they are learning science and mathematics? So you might say that maybe I am very idealistic about it because I can speak maybe English very well. But these are things that I have observed in my 6 years of teaching in Kazakhstan. And for the most part of my work here, I didn't have a teacher's assistant. So my first year in Kazakhstan, I had to teach children whose first language is not English. So kids who speak Russian and Kazakh only. Okay, so number one, which is very important, teachers, we have to pre-teach important vocabulary words at the beginning of each lesson. Okay, so this is where the translation can come in. So I always tell my students that yes, it's okay to translate sometimes, but only with important vocabularies. You don't let them to translate sentences because that's not the point. So why not translate some important words that you will use during your lesson? And you do it at the beginning of the lesson. So you won't have a hard time telling the translation again and again and again while you are in the middle of your lesson. Number two is use animated gesturing or TPR. So in English language teaching, we call this total physical response. I know our teachers are very creative. And this TPR is something we do with our hands, with our body parts. So we are using our body to show or to describe a word or to describe a concept. So animated. Like in our examples a while ago, they actually used videos, which are, of course, good points. But in the absence of videos, we can actually use our body parts to explain what we want to say. Number 3, of course, very important, is to use appropriate visual aids or props. I said appropriate because sometimes I guess we are too creative and we tend to put a lot of things in a lesson that is not really necessary or is not really helping the students. So maybe we can just include several, but these several materials are appropriate and 100% useful for the students. When I say visual aids, this can include maybe flashcards where you can put on the blackboard or the whiteboard. It can also include a PowerPoint presentation or Canva presentation. Okay, props maybe like maybe you're gonna bring balls or bricks or Singapore mathematics manipulatives, the one that Marshall Cavendish has been generously providing our Kazakhstan teachers. So, appropriate visual aids or props. Number 4, and I think it's a good way to help with the communication. But this one can happen by the end of a chapter, is to use show and tell or role play activities if possible. So if we can remember Miss Dinara's presentation a while ago, their school has been conducting science fairs every term or every half of the year. So this science exhibit or science fair or role play activities in English language can help the students to develop and sharpen their communication skills in English. Okay. And the last one, I guess has been very useful for me, is to help students build a dictionary of vocabulary words. Okay, important. So this is relatable to number 1. So in my practice where I've been working for 2 years, in the beginning of a term, I provide a dictionary of important terminologies for the students. So whenever they feel that, oh, I forgot about this, they can just go back to this and check. Okay, there are other strategies we can use in helping our students develop English language skills while learning science and mathematics. But then again, teachers, what I want to emphasize here is that still the best way for us teachers to develop this thing is to let our students communicate authentically in the classroom. So in the beginning, of course, I understand they might have, problem in speaking, problem in grammar, they cannot find the vocabulary, but it's okay. Motivate your students to learn, to express what they want to say, and it's gonna improve in the longer run. So yeah, that's about my talk. I hope that I have shared what I want to share, and I hope that this will be useful in our roles as ESL, Singapore Mathematics, and Singapore Science teachers.
Thank you, Angellie. This was wonderful. I just wanted to ask you, how was it? I believe can you tell us more about your teaching of primary math and science in Kazakhstan? About your experience, because you only have English as the language of instruction. So did you encounter any problems? How was it like?
Oh yes, of course. That's the main problem I encountered during my first year in Kazakhstan. I was actually a little bit disappointed, maybe not disappointed, but I was surprised that some of the kids cannot speak English. So for a concept, for a subject like mathematics and science, it was difficult to teach without the help of a teacher's assistant. So, 6 years ago, Singapore mathematics wasn't that really popular back then. But I guess I've been using these strategies even before by using manipulatives, flashcards, or showing videos, showing pictures that are related and appropriate to the lesson.
Mhm. Awesome.